do that, we created a short, yeah, I see that you just started recording it, so I'll re-describe some of it a little bit. We did this survey where we wanted to get collect people's experiences about this video game called Gone Home. To do that, we did a short answer survey that was distributed online, various platforms. And at first, we thought things were going great. We had hundreds of responses, and we're like, yeah, this is great. This is awesome. But then Karen went into the data set and looked at it and noticed some anomalies, some of which started to indicate to us that our data set was being, or that our survey had pretty much been infiltrated by bots, online bots that were trying to get that $50 Amazon gift card. That was the potential reward for doing the study. And so we had to go through and clean the data. Karen came up with a neat little system where, one of the big tells was how long did it take for them to do the survey. Again, it was like a short answer survey. I can't totally remember off the top of my head how many questions we asked, 4 or 5. And people were giving, paragraph long responses to sort of each prompt within, 10, 15 seconds. And obviously that's not possible. Some of it could be, error on the Qualtrics system side or whatever. But the other thing we started noticing was that a lot of those responses, particularly ones that were done really quickly, what we could tell was that if you kind of just glance at the response really quickly, it kind of like looked like, yeah, just pretty much answering it. But then if you really read the response, it was sort of nonsensical, right? So it'd be a question like, what was your experience about, how did you come to learn about the game Gone Home? Right? Most people would be like, oh, I heard about it on a podcast, I saw it online, I saw a review about it, whatever. And then, but these other responses, these bot responses would be, something like, it would be like Gone Home is a game about a girl, or like it would be, or like really, or even more nonsensical than that, like Gone Home, the game I found, or something like that. And
Wasn't
it was
there a
just,
bunch of stuff about furniture?
yeah, there was a
I
bunch of
don't
stuff
know what
about
that
furniture, like
was.
Gone Home, the game, or Gone Home, the story, organized furniture. Like that would be like weird sentences like that, where it's like in the game, there's nothing. Furniture is not a thing that you do in this game. It's a very story-based game where you walk through like a haunted house, right? Like it's, and so we go through this whole process where we recognize that there's this bot data, and we go through and clean it, and we go from like 300 something responses to 40. And obviously this became, we thought that this was pretty interesting. So we wrote, we have the paper about Gone Home, but then we wrote sort of a side paper that we're trying to get out right now, really kind of talking about, what happened in this study, what the process was for us to clean this data and to go through it to identify what were bots, and really to start to think about, this was 2 years ago, right? This was really at the peak of this new wave of the LLM models. And online data collection is something that's been difficult for researchers to figure out for a long time. Click farms and bot farms, these aren't new phenomenons, but particularly for Likert scales. This has been an issue for, I don't know, probably 2 decades now, if I'm not mistaken, Karen, where you got to be really thoughtful about attention check items, how do you structure questions, randomizing the questions, right? Because you can get these automated, people run these automated scripts to search for surveys and things like that to try to get the prizes or the rewards or whatever it is, but then they're giving you bad data, right? It'll just go through and click all twos or something like that. um and again, do it really quickly and all this fun stuff. So the LLMs are sort of this evolution of this, where not only now can you script, write something to kind of quickly take Likert scales, seems that so there's technology available to us that allows people to quickly, again, automated go through qualitative surveys too, which is something that I don't think any of us really fully anticipated. I mean, now looking back on it, hindsight's 2020. Obviously, I think that this was an obvious outcome, but we thought it was important to write something up about that. So that's pretty much the major project that we're working on at this point, trying to get that out. And I got an invitation from a journal called the Journal of Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. And so I think I'm gonna. It's a new open access journal, and they offered cost-free publication. And so if, it gets accepted. So I think we're going to send it out there and see if they like it. And again, try to get people to think about, the fact that, um, again, all the things, right? We've had to go through a whole systematized kind of conversation within psychology about how to handle bots and scripts for quantitative, right, surveys. Now we're going to have to do the same thing with qualitative data too. It's also not safe from that, particularly I think that short response sort of answers. I don't know, Karen, if there's anything else you really wanted me to add. The video game team, again, we have some other things going on too. We have that initial Gone Home paper that just keeps getting taken it to places, and then they say no, or they do reviews, and then it gets held up, and it's just been one of those papers that's been hard to find a home. But we're gonna have a new submission for that soon, and then we have a follow-up study to that where we're really trying to it's more of a theory exercise sort of paper where we're trying to operationalize this idea of representation, particularly within video games, and kind of pointing out or kind of from a high level looking at what has the research on queer representation in media in the past sort of been, and using that sort of as a case study to say in video games, there's specific unique affordances that are different from movies and books and music and things like that, where the player has some agency, has some participation, has some projection onto this idea of what we think about as representation, right, within media. You can make your own avatars, or you bring something to the avatar, even if it's a pre-made one for you, right? And so trying to kind of articulate all of that to help grow our right awareness of this construct of representation, particularly within interactive media, trying to, help highlight its unique affordances. And, Julie Flores and Jean Shi, they're working really hard on a manuscript for that right now. Actually, we'll meet with them in a couple of hours to talk with them about it. So that's all the exciting stuff that we've got going on here. Again, Karen, I don't know if there was
Yeah.
anything else you wanted me to
No,
highlight.
that's great. I just, you know, I wonder, anyone might know anything about this. I just wonder how many research papers have published quantitative bot data without knowing it, and whether those will be revealed in the future. And I wonder how many now are publishing some qualitative bot data they honestly don't know, or bot data. And then I recently went to, every year they have an APA editors event, and this one was kind of grim in the sense of telling everything that's happening to the research world. It was kind of surreal. But one thing they said was that one of the reasons there's been a big increase in submissions, and one of the reasons is they think they're basically like bot submissions, like AI writing journal articles and submitting them. So God, I hope that one day they're not like, guess what, Karen? That paper that you loved was written by bots. That would be super
Yeah.
embarrassing. But it's, things evolve, like just in my lifetime as a scholar. You know, when I was in grad school, kids were sitting in rooms with pencils and paper and filling out the things. And then there was a certain set of things to look for, like bored undergrads, writing all sevens, or, people like not finishing, or just, all kinds of things like that. But now we've got, we're out there in the wild world of the digital lands. And, in 5 years, we'll be talking about who knows what that's
Yeah.
that's happening there. They did say that they APA and this is APA Journals, and the CEO of APA Journals who hosts this, and she was saying that she their best guess is that there's going to be a reduction in submissions to journals because of things like grants being canceled. Um, and so then people can't afford to, or don't have the resources to do the research they want, and so the amount of output may go down. I don't know, to me, there's pros and cons of this because, academics are always stretched. And we've talked about this before, how there's maybe 20% of the people doing 80% of the output or whatever. But um, if you're on some kind of treadmill, probably, if you're an academic. Like, I have friends who teach at community college, and they're teaching some insane number of courses, like 8 courses per semester, you know? Oh my God. I don't even, my eyeballs would just pop out of my head if I tried to do that. But you know, everyone's got pressures because of money and different things. And then of course all the stuff with they mentioned basically people trying to come down hard on what they consider DEI subjects in articles, which formerly known as stuff we want to write about. You know, and then it's awful. I'm just laughing because I'm going crazy. What was the other thing? Oh, she mentioned this quickly. Rose Sokol Chang is the name of the CEO of APA Journals, that some people are pressing towards having any study that is not hypothesis testing be frowned upon. So I was like, oh, she means qualitative research or other things, you know, case studies or other things that would come under. So experimental stuff is hypothesis testing, you know, correlational stuff is hypothesis testing. But you know, we're all living it, right? You know, different people trying to influence everything, and they're influencing the lives of scientists and scientists' direction and output. So there's nothing good to say about any of that. We're just in this situation, and every day something else happens. So
Mhm.
any comments, anything?
Did
I don't
she
want to say
say,
anything about
Karen,
that, but
why?
there it is. What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did
Mhm.
she say why that hypothesis testing was being prized? Did she feel like it was because of the bot infiltration, or was it
Oh
something
no,
else?
not relevant to bots. She did not elaborate. I am interpreting why she would have said that, uh you know, science has preferred quantitative to qualitative work, and qualitative work has been making inroads. And so, like many things, things that we were making inroads on are being, you know, kind of threatened. Um, so no, it wasn't about bots. So, you know, this what Andreas was talking about is newer, because we've known that they could just fill in numbers to surveys very quickly, but they can also write compelling answers to questions now. And side note, I can remember clearly reading some answers to the questions and feeling like, oh, this is a real person and I hear their struggle. And then, you know, they filled it out in 8 seconds or something. So nope.
Yep.
But they were good
Yep.
at faking that.
Mhm.
Maybe due to that factor, qualitative will tend to lean on live interviews then.
Yeah, I feel like around here it does anyway. And there is a controversy about, you may have heard about that, you know, when we say mixed methods, especially coming from like a quantitative training, mixed methods to quant researchers can just mean you add some open-ended items to your survey, and then there's some pushback against that, that's not full-fledged qualitative work. But in my mind, it's just what it is, and it always has been what it is, and it's not the same thing as the ideal of full-on qualitative research, which is very in-depth, very, you know, rich in both the materials and the interpretation. So
I think it
it's
adds nuance.
yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. Who knows why, who and why people will be like, guess what? We're just only hypothesis testing. How does stuff
Well,
happen nowadays?
I think in
This
mixed methods like our study, it was key, just like Andreas was explaining how that's kind of a tell when you're checking for bots. I think in our study, from study 1 to study 2, it made a big difference. Being able to get that feedback and then adjust our design.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of qualitative research, and of just there are times when you just want to ask an open question like that. It's not, you're not delving into the person's deep phenomenological experience or something. You just want to know, did that make sense? You know, it's just it's for what it's for.
And also if we miss something.
Yeah. I also think too, a big part of this is, not decoupled from the same pressures that are going on. And I think when we largely think about sort of the cultural shifts that we're seeing, there's something about, I mean, I think in large part, a lot of what's happening to psychology has become, what can we kind of sell to the government, to tech companies, to, right? And causal, right? Oh, we know how to capture someone's attention, or we know how to manipulate their emotions on the scale, right? Is really a very easy sell, right? Like, and it's kind of easily, by people who don't have a nuanced understanding of psychology, right? It's easy to kind of be like, and here's sort of what it is. When you get into the nuance of the human experience and subjectivity and diversity, right? Or feedback loops of environment and gene interaction, things like that, you start to lose people who only care about psychology as a means to an end, right? As opposed to understanding the human experience, right? From as broad of a perspective or as empirical of a perspective as we can get. And so I think that, a large part of what's happening was that for a while we were investing so much in psychology as a discipline that it naturally started to grow. And I think that that's when we started to see this inroad. And I think in the times before, psychology was kind of on the defense, right? Is this a real discipline? Is it as scientific as other disciplines? That was really like, the battle for a long time. And so I think there was an over reliance on quantitative research then, sort of as a defense mechanism, right? Sort of as a, yes, we are as valid as physics or as chemistry or whatever. Um, and then I think that that kind of died. I think that, right, it was pretty well established, particularly like with neuroscience and cognition, right, and all of this stuff. And then the discipline started to grow, and so, right, all these other branches and aspects of it started to grow too, particularly when we were investing heavily as a society into more colleges and higher education, right, and these things. And as that started to scale back again, I think again, there's all these other sort of social pressures from a really top-down perspective of, okay, well, what's left, right? The people who are left, or the institutions that are left that are trying to advocate for themselves to stick around. Psychology departments are a really interesting phenomenon because they are some undergrads at the big universities. It's one of the highest enrolling majors that there is, but typically it's housed in departments that are the ones that are seeing the most budgetary cuts, right? So then you kind of get all these sort of conflicting pressures. And I think again the bias is to, well, if I can do this experiment that shows that humans respond to this thing, well then, right, that's going to be marketable to, right, the tech companies or to the government or to whoever. And again, that's just a little bit easier of a sell, particularly when we're being hostile, outwardly hostile to any research that's about diversity or oppression or social justice or anything like that. Um, it becomes really easy to sort of pivot and be like, okay, I'm just interested in how do we, like, manipulate someone's attention or something like that in an experimental paradigm. Can we apply that to a social media feed or something like that? And that
I
research,
do
of
want to
course, is
say, by the way,
interesting,
that
but
the APA did say reaffirm its utter commitment to what people are categorizing as DEI.
yeah,
There
good.
was even the word woke in the PowerPoint. I cannot tell you how much I dislike hearing that in that context. But
But
yeah, this is some of the heart and soul of what we do, right?
mhm,
And yeah, it's like you're just starting to make progress. I,
yep,
I don't
yep.
have to tell everyone how frustrating the world is right now. But yeah, that's really great, Andres. The thing about saying that we're a real science by collecting data, or I love physiological psych, but sometimes people say like, okay, well that seems more real. We can tell in an fMRI your brain is doing this or that, and that's a fact. I just think it's fascinating in and of itself, but it's so hard to try to explain to people who don't really get what you're doing, like to explain the value of something that's sort of inherently valuable, or if they just don't understand, like I don't know if I've told this story in a while, but one of my like unforgettable moments of my career so far is APA was helping me prep for a congressional testimony. And I've like flown in, and there I am in DC, and I'm meeting with somebody on the APA staff, and he says, by the way, Congress people don't understand cause and effect like scientists do. And I was just like, what? Like my entire quantitative training was all about, the power of cause and effect and the importance of understanding what is causal data and all of this. And I think to put it just as an example, in video game violence, so like the effect of a game on some outcome, um, apparently some Congress people think if you're saying some form of media has some effect, they're saying they in their heads think, so every time someone plays a game with that content, they are uniformly experiencing that. Like if you play a violent video game, every person immediately becomes violent and takes violent action. I don't know why you would I don't know why you would think that, but you know, I'm sure each of us will have moments in our career where we think, wait, what? Like, oh, the audience doesn't have any idea like of one of the foundational principles of the entire way I've been trained. And so, it was my job between that 6 p.m. meeting and then the next morning at, 8:30 or whatever to go like, okay, so what I need to say then is something that takes into account that they don't understand causality. Okay. That was not the easiest overnight task I've ever done. But I was just working on teaching of psychology class, and the students were writing about, including Tessie, were writing about uh, things that we have discovered through research make excellent teachers. And I was thinking about how strange it is that people devalue teaching sometimes, compared to research, because it calls upon you to do so many things that require high skills, a lot of them interpersonal, but also, intellectual. And yeah, the idea that it's really easy to do any of that is, I don't get that, but you know. Okay, so I'll give just a little update that especially with Josh out sick for a while, I also wanted to give some more people an opportunity to potentially get published. I invited Andrew and Jesse into what we call the Compass Project, and we have our marching orders, and so they're helping me work on revisions. And this, I specifically called them in based on skills that they had demonstrated that I thought were a great fit for this project, and were really right on target. Um, so I'll share one thing about that you may find interesting. So right now we're developing this seminar for November about AI tools for academic research. Mindy is on that, and Stephen's on that, and of course Andreas and Perry. So in this process, when you get a decision from a journal, you're looking for an invitation to revise and resubmit, and that's where we are here. And they tell you what you would need to do to make this publishable. And so I put that letter into ChatGPT and asked it to make a summary. Of course, I'd already read the letter. So it's not like I don't know what the content is or anything, but so that I can read through the summary and just it's a way to me of it's telling it back to me. I'm saying to myself, oh yes, that is what I thought was happening, and it helps me organize it and divide up different tasks. And it volunteered to make a table for me of the specific tasks and who asked for it, and then it volunteered to write a template of a response letter, because when you turn in your changed manuscript to the journal, you submit a cover letter, and the cover letter goes through every comment that either the editor or the reviewers made and addresses that. So it did the template like, dear Dr. So and so, and here's your email address, and here we're resubmitting this manuscript, and then you go in there and it'll be still lots of work to of course write the responses to each of those things, but those are the kinds of things that if someone else will just start a letter and put the right person's name on it and say an introductory sentence, then we can get in there and write the substantive answers. So those are some ways I was using AI to help me with that. And I'm excited. We our due date that the manuscript has to be submitted to the journal is like November 21st, but I and Jesse will be in Cincinnati. As they say in the South, Lord willing and the creek don't rise. We will be in Cincinnati doing something. And so really I leave the 16th, so I need to have that thing in. But one thing I want to say here is I really appreciate, Andrew and Jesse, your positive attitude towards it. I will say, Perry, you and I and Josh are jaded people. We're just like, dear God, no. We're tired. We got bags under our eyes. But Andrew and Jesse are fresh. They're ready to come in like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and do this thing. So that was very rejuvenating for me. I appreciate that. Instead of like, really in my head, I'm like, the editor does not like this paper. But that is an opportunity to say, all right, let's make him like it. Let's at least show him that we're hard workers and we're going to respond to each item. So that is very helpful. Let's see. I know Josh is out and what we call the rewatching paper is still under review. I'm trying to think, what am I missing? The monograph that Jean-Pierre edited is, I guess, in process. Does anyone know any updates about that? I don't think it's out yet or anything.
I haven't seen any updates on it.
Well, let's just relive again the fact that the AI study is published. Yay, 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 yay.
Yes, I just went through the proofing process where now an independent APA editor goes in and nitpicks, and it's kind of the same actually when you go through the dissertation process with the proofreader. There will be things like, for example, you might write author at all when it really should just be author, like just tiny little typos that even a close editor or peer reviewer will not catch. But then there's like the proofreader who comes in at the end. The only thing that I did not like is that they also told us we had to update our title because AI is an abbreviation and you can't use abbreviations in titles. So the title's a little clunkier now, but instead of saying like AI generated, it has to say artificial intelligence generated.
Yeah. So where did that come from? Is that APA style now, or is that something else?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, they said APA style was titles and running headers could not use abbreviations.
Wow. So we couldn't say sonar if we were studying sonar?
I guess not.
All right. Well, damn it, my sonar project's going down the toilet now. So that is good. Okay, what projects am I forgetting to mention? Of course, we will be heading toward the MTB project. Anything else anyone wants to throw in there? Okay, so before we move into those of us who are on the MTB study go there, I did want to have just a little discussion. I love to hear what everyone has to say about this. So I was thinking on the MTB project, we are we've worked on redesigning basically the way we assigned two levels of the independent variable, the TV theme songs that people are very familiar with and thus might make them feel nostalgic, and the ones that they don't know or barely know and might make them feel less nostalgic. I just wanted to stop here and say, in case you're wondering, this is probably not about us. It's about something I don't talk about that often, but that is, I went to grad school in social psychology and so did research on things other than media, and then decided I only wanted to do social psych stuff about media. But the thing about media is it's really difficult. It's more challenging than many areas to get an experimental and a control group, or two different versions, two different levels of an independent variable, because it's those of us who are at that music meeting last week. The ideal is those two levels of that independent variable they only differ on the thing that you're talking about. In this case, the ability to evoke nostalgia in participants more strongly in one than in the other, but that the ideal is that other things are held constant. But we got into a whole conversation about how do you do that for music? I mean, music evokes emotion, and even if you weren't alive or, old enough in the 70s, you can still evoke a sense of the 70s and it could make you feel nostalgic. We've talked about this before. Josh talks about this sometimes. You can be nostalgic for a time that you never were present for. So is, we got into, is there any such thing as music that doesn't evoke emotions or music that doesn't evoke the era that it's from? And so we sort of worked through this to realize, we're basically going with familiar, unfamiliar. Odds are some of these are very familiar and odds are they're not very familiar. But I just wanted to bring that up. So in grad school, when I was doing more video game stuff, people it would be a conundrum. Like, do you have an actual like published real video game that people are playing and it only differs on aggression? So there's like a video game that centers on shooting, let's say, and there's another version of that that doesn't have shooting. Like, how often would that happen? And so then people would be like, oh, well, you should hire someone to write you a game that the only thing that differs is like, how would that happen? What in what universe? I don't know. It's just there's not two versions of that really exist. And in narrative psych, I need to like count or something one day when I don't know, I've broken my leg and I have nothing better to do. But how many studies are actually done on written narratives? The plurality of them, because you can control a written narrative and you can just change a few things, whereas it's much more challenging to take a film or a TV show and try to equate and yet at the same time hold the other things constant. So I just wanted to bring that idea up that is quite difficult, I think, in media psychology. It's something that has kept me up at night over the years of trying to figure it out. So um, I just wanted to say that is, to me, that's the context in which we're, doing this.
It'll be interesting to see, putting the ethics aside for a second now with the AI video tools like the Sora that's been going around the last few weeks with its latest update and its uncanny realism. I maybe uncanny is not even the right word because it goes past the uncanny valley to just looking real. I think we're pretty close to the point where we could take a video clip with audio and have very controlled variations where you could actually create experimental manipulations by only changing a very specific element of the video. And if we can figure out the ethics of that stuff, then I think that could be one way to improve our research is rather than narrative stories, we could also use videos and audio and get very clean on how we manipulate it to keep everything else held consistent.
Well, I'm glad you said that. That is good news in terms of being able to do. Now I'm just imagining like a show in which people are just hanging out, and in one scene they start punching each other, and the other they're like, let's paint. I don't know, but no, seriously, it would be great to just alter that content. What do you think about music, though? Could such a thing be done for music?
Oh yeah, I mean you can use AI music as well to alter genres, singers, pace. I think it's the same sort of deal. I'm actually supposed to talk to I don't know if you know Scott Garner.
Hmm.
Um, he's working on a study around AI music. I'm supposed to talk to him about this week.
Oh, wow.
And they're looking at something they were interested in what we did with our AI story study.
Oh, good. Yeah, Scott's great. Yeah, what about the emotional part about music, like the conundrum we were talking about last time about we went through the gamut of, okay, what about yoga music? What about nature? All the stuff. And is emotionless music what we're looking for? And then we kind of went back to, well, we're talking about TV show themes, so what is it we're looking for? Do we want to eliminate ones that might provoke people into feeling things? And we decided, no, like it's okay if they have a 90s vibe or whatever, because it's not supposed to be not emotional at all or not good music, but we're hoping that that's enough. I still think, given all things, I probably want to do the no treatment control because I feel like it's justified here. But any other thoughts about music and how, if we were going forward and we're going to keep working, let's say, with music and having experimental research, then any thoughts about how to navigate that going forward?
Yeah, I have a couple of suggestions off the top of my head. The first is that based on the, I mean, I did miss last week, so I'm a little behind, but based on the previous conversations I've gotten to sit in on, my thought is that you're kind of, it's kind of, and the video game stuff has some of this affordance too, where it's like, part of it is that what you're trying to say is that one type of, right, the nostalgia is rooted in not just the music evoking the emotion, but that the IP will elicit a stronger emotion, right? So in my mind, you can kind of make the argument that maybe we can't eliminate this, right? Some sort of affect response to old timey music, but theoretically, the hypothesis is that not just random old timey music, but music attached to a TV show that somebody has, right, some sort of connection to, that is going to elicit a stronger, right, statistically stronger response. And so, it might not work, right? Like the paradigm might not work, where you might not get significant effects. But if you see, positive, or if you see strong responses overall, well, then you could get into the discussion and be like, well, it might be that music has this unique affordance where it just elicits strong enough emotion, and our measurement, right, or like our theories and measurements around this isn't sensitive enough to accommodate that or something. I don't know. Or you could do like a moderation model, right, where you use your items of familiarity to see, right, does that predict a stronger or a weaker effect in those two groups. Would be another way to go around it, to see if again, if you're, when you do like the basic difference, right, mean difference between the two groups, if you're getting it on significant effect, well, maybe if you're collecting that data on familiarity, you can introduce that into the model and see, does that make that effect stronger. The other would be to have a true control condition where it's like they don't listen to music, right? Where they do some other filler task that's totally different, or like it's like 30 seconds of like static noise or something, or right, like where,
We were talking about this. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. No treatment control, literally no
yeah,
treatment. But it could be like, we could talk about that here a bit. Like, we were having trouble coming up with any type of music that wouldn't elicit some of these feelings that might result in these positive outcomes. So yeah,
or
I didn't think
again,
about a
the
non-music task. Well, we
the
talked about
time would
video, but
be like if you could find like modern lo-fi kind of techno-y, like something that's like
we did that too.
totally totally different. Yeah, all
Yeah.
right, you guys are talking about it. Yeah, so
Mhm.
that would maybe be, but again, you sort of run into the, if it doesn't work, then we're kind of stuck with that design choice. Whereas a true control, that's probably going to give you the biggest effect size
Yeah.
amongst anything else. So that's kind of hard to sort of think of, think about the affordances there. Or kind of as an aside, another really tricky thing about media is when you're comparing cross media, but like the same thing. So like, and Karen, you're super familiar with this. Famously, researchers, the video game aggression stuff, right? People want to know, do video game, like, okay, is this a general media violence effect? Like, does all media that contains violence, make this happen? Or is it something about video games that makes it stronger? And people have tried to do experiments where it's like, we show people clips from a Spider-Man movie and then have them play a Spider-Man game, but obviously what's happening in the game isn't the exact same thing that's happening in a movie, all right? The movie has certain narrative qualities, right? Certain things that are going on, right, that the game doesn't have. So how do you truly control for those things? Because you can't just give those two conditions and think that's going to elicit the same thing. It shouldn't in a lot of ways. And so again, just to kind of verify that this is a really difficult thing to walk, right? Media does have these unique affordances, and like the act of engage in consumption of a media product opens up so many doors psychologically that it's it's hard to control, right? It's hard to know all the filters you've got to turn on and off, and not right things you got to think about. And um, all you can do is try to think through it as best as you can and make whatever decision you think makes the most sense. But the other thing would be to, of course, making the decision also based on the affordance of what is that going to look like practically for you as a research team to carry out. You don't want 5 conditions, right? Man, that's going to mean that you need 120 people per cell, right? Right, all of this stuff all of a sudden gets out of hand. Um, you're confined to what's available to you too, and so what sort of paradigm makes sense to do your best to test it, and then to highlight those limitations so that when either this research team does a replication or another research team does a replication, they can try to accommodate for those.
Yeah, and we settled on the original ones that we picked out that seemed to be working well, eliciting a strong response, the Rolling Stone top songs, and we
Yeah.
worked with that. And then now we've been gathering and editing a variety of different songs that are like I say, they are still TV theme songs, but they're less likely to be familiar with them for different reasons.
Good.
They were very short-lived American shows or some British shows, and we're always taking the familiarity ratings on those. So yeah, I feel good about this. I feel like
Yeah.
there's bound to be a bigger spread. I would say especially because some people showed a little bit of being frustrated or irritated when they heard something that they didn't know in some of our
Yeah.
pilots. And so those songs may seem really weird to them, or just they may find them the reverse of feeling the good the good well-being, beneficial, whatever feelings. And we are changing to 30 seconds so that we can randomly assign them 3 out of the 6 every time, whichever condition they're in. So it kind
Good.
of spreads across different songs, and it's not just one given song. What if there's something quirky about that? So
Good. That makes
yeah, I
sense.
think this is going to be good.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You could even think about some sort of, if you've noticed this frustration effect, and you think that that's going to magnify the differences between your conditions, you could even think about a very subtle prime, right? Like how do you present this, right? Like the study that they're going to be conducting, right? If you present it as like you're going to hear like these are all, if the prompts are same across both conditions, like you're going to hear some songs that should be familiar to you, right, from like these old TV shows, and then they hear a bunch of stuff that they never heard before, right? Like that might be a subtle little way to magnify that effect size in those two conditions. You have to
So
consider
I
how you
think
do
right now,
that, but
correct me if I'm wrong, we just say you're going to hear some TV theme songs.
yeah, and that might be good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could change it to the experimental people, you're going to hear some songs that you may know, and the controlled, you may not know all of these songs, or just to everyone, you're going to hear some TV theme songs and you may or may not know them, just to
Yeah.
warn them. But that might soften it, like at least it will make
Yeah.
sense. They won't just say like, what is happening to me right now? I'm hearing some 90s, someone's on a Casio, what is happening? Every little thing, every little step. And then, yeah, some people out there like,
Yeah.
oh, psychology is not a real science.
Yeah.
I wish I had a seed and I was planting it.
I know.
It would just grow.
Yeah. But yeah, we got to think about, even the wording on the right directions of how they're right, going to think about it. We have to think through that and be very thoughtful because that's going to have an impact on what we think is going to happen. But yeah, prompting them with you're going to hear some TV show theme songs or something like that. I think that that's good because you can kind of set their expectation with this idea of the frustration, or the like, whoa, I really thought I was gonna, or like the cover, right, or like the informed consent. You can have like a photo of MASH and a photo of the Brady Bunch, and like really prime people to expect this is what the study is going to be about. And then that control condition gets hit with a bunch of stuff that they don't recognize, right? That might be helpful
Yeah.
or
So
hurtful, depending on how you want to think about
yeah.
it.
Okay, so I think we're probably ready to move into the nitty-gritty of that, testing out the survey and everything. So Andreas, you're going to Scotland, and Perry, when are you leaving for Japan?
I leave next week, but I'll be here next Wednesday.
Okay. I wish I was going to Japan and Scotland, both.
I know.
Just hop
I
over
want
to
to go to Japan.
Scotland. Keep going to Japan. All right. So anyone who wants to stay, stay. Should we stay or should we go now? To use a song from my era.